So, bringing it all back together, cascading vision done correctly, especially putting the feedback loop in. If you got the feedback loop, now you have a way to start tracking, is what we're cascading in the way of a VSPT, is what we're cascading in the way of a one thing, is it actually making it its way intact through the organization? And we won't know that unless we're actually having a feedback loop where the teams are communicating back to us the one things that they need. Because then you can compare the one thing that you're communicating down to the one thing that's coming back, and you'll be able to identify the disconnects in your VSPT, the disconnect between your vision and strategy and the disconnect with the people and the tasks. By doing it this way, this is a way of thinking, it's a mindset, and a way of working for the leadership to work together with the people in their teams to be able to create that feedback loop. In one of the projects on which we worked recently, we worked very hard to start to bring the executives directly into team level, bypassing all of the cascades, because what we were observing was that the feedback coming back was so heavily filtered that we're not sure that the same message that was being communicated upwards from the team back through the organization, that the message was actually connecting. And that was actually confirmed when we sat down and did a retrospective with the executive and a couple of his direct reports in the room. It was a very interesting meeting. It was extremely interesting. First, because he was asking really good questions, asking the right questions, and it was like one of the team members started off with such an impassioned, glowing report of the team. It was just amazing. The one person he shared, this team means more to me than the group I work with. When I work with this team, it's the highlight of my day. When I walk into the Agile room where the team is at, it's like a sanctuary for me. It's like a place where I can go and block out everything else that's negative that's happening in my work. When I come there, I know I'm in a protected environment. When I see my team members in the hall, we just don't pass each other and say hi. We actually stop and talk to each other. And these team members have become my friends. I'd be willing to throw he didn't say it this way, but he basically was saying, I'd be willing to throw myself under a bus for these guys. And he actually said that in a different way, where he said, yeah, when I come in and I see that my sprint backlog items aren't moving across the board, I really feel like I've let my team down. And the executive, that really stuck with him. And then they got into a discussion about when to use Agile. And as I've been saying all along, like with the Stacy diagram, because of the complex nature of the communications within this organization, one of the team members piped up when the executive asked, well, where and when should we use Agile? Basically referring to the Stacy diagram. And he drew a picture up on the board where you had Agile methodologies and then traditional. I asked him to cross off the traditional and write hybrid, because one of the youngest guys in the room piped up and he said, we should be using Agile everywhere. And that was absolutely correct, especially based on what we had talked about in the complexity of the communications, that these projects are 90-95% communications. Because of the complex communications, forget, is it simple technology? Forget if it's simple requirements. Because the communications are complex, that's why you should be using Agile everywhere. So I pointed out that we should integrate every part of Agile that we can into anywhere where they want to do traditional, in order to try to get traditional up to higher levels of performance. And then what was really interesting is that the day after, that executive sent in a couple of his direct reports to meet with me and the Agile coach, the Scrum Master for the team. And they're like, oh, how do you create a team that's willing to throw themselves under the bus? And it's like, guys, did you read the books? If you've read Nehemiah Effect, if you've read Flow, they wouldn't even be asking those questions because it emerges from those books and from these trainings how you create a team that is that loyal to themselves, to each other. And the executive's like, I want that on every one of my teams. What's the secret sauce? How do we do that? Well, what you have in front of you, understanding the difference in the languages, understanding dilution, understanding distillation, and that you have to be able to get to the one thing. And it was interesting with a couple of the teams that we worked there, both teams about third sprint in hit a distillation point that we don't typically write about in our books or blogs or things like that. But it was a very interesting point, and it happened about third sprint or third iteration in for both teams, where suddenly they looked at each other, they looked at the backlogs that they created in the original workshop, and they went, yeah, those items are important, but here's the sprint goal for this coming sprint. And the teams, both of them, and they didn't know what the other teams are doing, but both teams immediately started rewriting their user stories for the upcoming sprint, going, in order to achieve that goal, which gets us one step closer to the vision and mission, in order to achieve that goal, we need to do boom, 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 boom. And suddenly the backlog was filled with the items that would actually deliver the goal. And that's when distillation happened. And creating teams that are willing to throw themselves under the bus for each other, it's not a simple thing, okay, in one way. It's very complex. We're talking human interactions. But the one thing that will always bring a team together is that if they understand that those working with them, like the product owner and the scrum master and the agile coaches, if the team instinctively and intuitively understands that those three roles, the people fulfilling those roles, would, without hesitation, throw themselves under the bus for the team, that generates within the team the willingness to throw themselves under the bus for the other person. That is the foundation of servant leadership. And for me, it's amazing that a lot of leaders, they don't like the term servant leadership because then they feel like, well, I'm being made a slave to my employees and what do they know? And that's not the point. The point is, if you're walking the talk and not just talking the talk, then your team members will know that this person's genuine, they care for me, and they're gonna put their career on the line for me. When they understand that, that is so powerful. If there's a secret sauce, that's it. But that's what we've been teaching in Nehemiah Effect, in Flow, in our trainings, in our transformation trainings, even in our video set on why use Flow. And I'll be doing one more video set on using Flow with Agile and Scrum, what I would call flow-based Agile. And I'm not going to teach you Agile. I'm going to teach you how to take Agile and turbocharge it. But that's another presentation. This touches right back into what I was just talking about unifying the vision of the team. And a lot of people, they may come from a Judeo-Christian ethics background, Protestant work ethics background. But they might not actually catch the root and the origin of this framework, because in the original, it was actually applied in the negative. But because it's such a foundational principle, it works. And this part comes out of the Tower of Babel. Now, we live in a post-Christian West, both in Europe and the US, where people have totally lost touch with their roots. They still have a lot of Judeo-Christian ethics that go through the culture, through our cultures, but they don't understand the origins of that. And this is one of the most powerful, it's actually stunning, frameworks that comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition. And this is the Tower of Babel. Now, I really don't care whether or not you take it literal or you don't. That doesn't matter. And I really don't care if you're for Christians or against them, or for Jews or against them. That's not the point here. The point here is this is ancient wisdom that is as true today as it was 4,000 years ago. Human nature hasn't changed regardless of how much our technology has changed. If you see how people behave with themselves, not much has changed in 4,000 years. But this one's really interesting, and this is a framework that literally floated up off the pages of the good old book. And they were building the Tower of Babel. And if you've read the story of the Tower of Babel, you would know that humankind was told to spread out and populate the whole planet. Instead, they hung together and built a city, and they started building a tower. So God literally came down, looked around to see what they were doing. He went, oh my goodness. These people are all speaking the same language. They're all of one mind. Anything that they propose to do, they're going to succeed. And if you've read the extra literature, the Tower of Babel was meant to allow humans access to the heavens. And they had one third was going to go fight with the angels, another third was going to go fight with somebody else, and the other third take over. And what was interesting, and that comes from extra biblical sources, it's not there in Genesis. But what is in Genesis is God came down and he said, oh my goodness, look at this. They're speaking the same language. They're all of one mind. And anything they propose to do, they will succeed. That right there should stop everybody in their tracks. Because if you really listen to what was said, it's like, oh my goodness. They had a single vision. They were going to build that tower. They were of one language. And so at that time, according to the Bible, everybody spoke the same language. They were they were single-minded in their desire to fulfill the vision and build the tower. And they planned it, they proposed it, they planned it, and they were doing it. And it's interesting that God's solution was to confuse the language. So he confused the language of all the workers, and they couldn't understand each other, and that's where the word Babel comes from. It's also, I think, one of the roots for the word Babylon. But he confused the language. And if you ever get a project, or if you ever get assigned to a project and you want to make sure it fails, the fastest way to help the project fail is to confuse the language, confuse the definitions, confuse the agreement, create a chaotic delivery, and guess what? You won't succeed. And so what was being applied in a negative way for the Tower of Babel actually becomes an incredibly powerful tool to unifying the vision for the team. That's why we spend a lot of time on definitions. We spend a lot of time on distilling agreement so that when we're delivering, everybody's able to focus and deliver great results. And then at the end of each iteration, we're double checking it to make sure that we're one step closer to the vision in the middle. So this is a very simple formula. One language plus one mind plus one plan equals the vision, or one vision. And one vision is vision first. And if you want a team that is willing to throw themselves under the bus for each other, this is one of the key tools for doing that. And when the team starts to trust each other based on being of one mind, they're speaking the same language, they've got the same mind about what they're delivering, then doing the plan is like breathing. And you'll have a team spirit that is focused on the vision, and it will become almost self-perpetuating. So this is a way to speak life using language and breathe life using one mind into the individuals and team members and the teams themselves. So this is incredibly powerful. And again, I really don't care if you like the source. The wisdom, the ancient wisdom that's coming out of this is so powerful and so profound that you can ignore this at your own risk. But we've been using this for 25 years, and we know that this works. Now, I'm only including a couple exercises in all of this because it's basically impossible to do exercises when I'm on this side of the video and you're on that side of the video. But it would be a good exercise for you to sort of pause the video, and if you're working as a leader, enterprise agile coach, or an executive coach, an agile coach or team level facilitator or scrum master, or any type of agile project program or portfolio manager, okay, and you want to deliver exceptional value to your teams, well, it's not a 2-day course, it's a 1-day course now. And it's hands-on, exercise only, because we're going to go through all of the content here online with you. But Flow gives you the tools, the frameworks, the skills, the mindset that you can immediately start to use to successfully reinvent your organizational culture, starting with the C-suite all the way to the individual team member. Okay. So on a Post-it note, here's where you actually need to pause the video after I'm done speaking here before we go to the next slide, is pause the video, write down on a Post-it note your personal vision, what's your higher purpose, what's your higher why, what your personal mission is, and then put your vision and your Post-it note and your mission on another. When you're done, put them up on a flip chart if you want. Okay, so put them on one note each, I guess is what I'm saying there. Okay, so on a separate Post-it note, write down your vision, and then on another Post-it note, write your mission. If you've got a flip chart there where you're working, put it up on that, or just put it on your personal Kanban that you might have on your desk. By the way, I would advocate using a personal Kanban with doing and done, and have your Post-it notes there, make it visible so that when your team members come in, they can say, oh, he's actually walking the talk, not just talking the talk. So go ahead and pause the video, write those down, and then come back.